Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Welcome to the evening satsang. Hridaya Kuhara Madhye Kevalam Brahma Matram Yahamaham Sakshat Atma Rupena Bhati Manasasvam Chinvata Majyatava Pavana Chalana Rodha Atmanishto Bhavatvam. Today we will be doing manana on the talk number 614 that I chose from Talks with Ramana Maharshi. Devotee, is it bad to desire something? Maharshi, one should not be elated on having his desire fulfilled or disappointed on being frustrated. To be elated on the fulfillment of desire is so deceitful. A gain will certainly be lost ultimately. Therefore, elation must end in pain at a future date. One should not give place to feelings of pleasure or pain, come what may. How do the events affect the person? You do not grow by something, nor wither away by losing it. You remain what you always are. Devotees, we worldly men cannot resist desire. Maharshi, you may desire, but be prepared for any eventuality. Make effort, but do not be lost in the result. Accept with equanimity whatever happens. For pleasure and pain are mere mental modes. They have no relation to the objective realities. How? So Maharshi gives a story which many of us have heard. There were two friends in a village in South India. They were learned and wanted to earn something with which they might afford relief to their respective families. They took leave of their parents and went to Benares on a pilgrimage. On the way, one of them died, the other was left alone. He wandered for a time, and in the course of a few months, he made a good name and earned some money. He wanted to earn more before he returned to his home. In the meantime, he met a pilgrim who was going south and would pass through the native village of the young Pandit. He requested the new acquaintance to tell his parents that he would return after a few months with some funds and also that his companion had died on the way. The man came to the village and found the parents. He gave them the news but changed the names of the two men. Consequently, the parents of the living man bemoaned his supposed loss, and the parents of the dead man were happy, expecting the return of their son bringing rich funds as well. You see, therefore, that pleasure and pain have no relation to the qualities but are mere mental modes. So, this is a beautiful, Bhagavan is giving us a beautiful lesson to do manana on these modes. Now, for example, there is a game called Chinese Whispers. I mean, many of us must have played in our childhood. Thing called Chinese Whispers. And Chinese Whispers, what you do, you form a line, and you whisper a sentence. Say the green tree has beautiful red apple, and a beautiful butterfly is sitting on it. A yellow butterfly is sitting on it. Now, that first person tells that to the second person. Now, the second person tells the third person tells the fourth, and second tells the fourth, second tells the third, okay, maybe 80%, and the right. The third tells the fourth, oh, he comes to 50%, right? And then the fourth tells the fifth, oh, he is told, I don't know what he told, but I will, whatever comes to my mind, I will tell the fifth. So he, the fourth tells the fifth something else, and sixth tells something else, and the seventh person who's actually got to tell what the first person said is totally distorted. So that means any thing that is said if it goes from one person to another person to another person to another person, it gets distorted. So Bhagwan says if you desire something, what happens? If your desire is not fulfilled, now imagine the first person who gave that sentence out to the second person. When he hears what the seventh person is saying, he will laugh. He will think, what mistake did I make in telling the second person? I told exactly what I wanted to, but the second person did not get it. And he relates something else. And what the seventh person said was a green tree with some apple on it, and the butterfly is flying all over the tree. So that is what would come out probably if it has been communicated well enough. So the point really is that everything is limited. So Bhagwan is saying this is important thing is one should not be elated by a desire fulfilled. So we continuously have desires. Means we want something. We want we think that we the subject want another object, and the object is going to give us happiness. Why? Because actually what we want to merge into that object. Means literally, if you hold a baby, even if a young baby, have a 1 year old baby, you try to hold it tight. What does it do? It tries to free itself. Why does it try to free itself? It knows that it has an identity by itself. But you, as a mother or a father, want to see that the subject and the object merge together, but really that never happens. So everything is so whenever we get something, what happens is if we get a new mobile, we want to keep it. But what happens? It's an object. So if it's an object, it is the today with us. Tomorrow it may not be there. So today it will work. But when you are near the sink, or you're somewhere near the seashore, suddenly the water comes into the mobile and the mobile is gone. Then what happens? Dukkha. So at the same time, the same mobile which was giving you all sukha with all your messages and all your friends and contacting them, suddenly gives you dukkha. So what happened to the mobile? The mobile was the same, but what happened to you? The mental, all the thoughts that were there have changed. So thoughts now suddenly you say this mobile is useless. I have to throw it away and I have to get another new mobile. And that new mobile, same thing happens. There's some technology issue and you're not able to get all your contacts in. Again, dukkha. So Bhagwan says that if you play the same game of Chinese whispers by being in Mauna, for example, if the seven people everybody just turns to the other person and keeps quiet, and that second person keeps quiet to the seventh person, and the seventh person is told, hey, what did you hear? And that person keeps quiet. Now imagine the first person and the seventh person both said the same thing. They were in silence. And that's what Bhagwan is saying, that in all our in the first Upadesha that he gave his mother, that whatever is to happen will happen, what is not to happen will never happen, however hard you may try. The thing really is to sumaira, is to keep quiet, keep in silence. So the great ones are actually in silence within. They are acting for a outsider. They are acting, but from inside they are in silence. Like Bhagwan, he was considered Dakshinamurti. Why? Because his teaching were in silence. Even if people came and sat around him, they learned in silence. So important thing is today, if in our lives, if you see what happens, we have to make an effort to be silent. If somebody is told to say speak, oh, everybody will love to speak, but how many of us would like to keep quiet? Very few. You actually have to make an effort to keep quiet. But keeping quiet and being in silence is your natural state. So this is, we don't want to be in a natural state. We want to be in a disturbed state. So we want, disturbed state means we want some objects. We want to hear something. We just can't be with ourselves. We have never had an opportunity to just be with ourselves. Sumaira, just sit down in one place and just enjoy the birds that are singing outside. Enjoy the silence. Enjoy the warmth or the cool. Enjoy the breeze. How many of us can do that? We can't do it. Why? Because we are compulsorily we want something. We are thinking animals. We are continuously want this, want that. And so Bhagavan says that if you are in this mode of Vishaya Vasanas, if you are continuously thinking about this and that, and I want this, I want that, then what's going to happen is you are going to have a disturbed mind. When you're going to have a disturbed mind, you are going to be in dukkha, continuous dukkha, because what happens? You think your friend, you will send a message to a friend, and that friend does not respond for you for 2 days, and you feel very bad. You sent a congratulatory message to somebody, and he didn't say thank you. Gone case. What's going to happen? You are going to be in dukkha. So the anything external, anything that you put down, anything which is done through these senses is all limited. So the Bhagavan keeps on saying that it's important that we understand this, the limitation of the senses and limitations of the world, and everything has two sides of a coin. So if there is pleasure on one side, there's pain on one side. If there's cold on one side, there is heat on the other side. So there are two sides of each coin. So the important thing in our sadhana is to accept. So acceptance is a great virtue. We have to accept whatever comes our way. If you are able to accept whatever comes our way, then we have no expectations. There is no difference between what is within and what is without. So anything that comes, whether it is pain, it is sorrow, if this body starts hurting or whatever happens, you just accept it. Like pain, if a disease comes, if you have fever coming, accept it, saying that I never called the fever, it came by itself. It's like a guest. It came by itself. It'll be there for some time, and after some time it will be go. It'll be there for 3 days, 5 days. Okay, no problem. It'll go. The we try to resist it, and we think, why did this fever come? Why is it bothering me? And I should take this mycin, this crocin, and this erythromycin, all mycins. Because of mycins, you get all these problems. So the important thing really is to be look within. And if you look within, that's why Bhagavan keeps saying, if you look within, then you go quiet. And that's the Chinese whisper of being quiet. You'll realize that the source and the destination were both quiet, and it was perfect. There was no distortion at all in silence. So this is the trick. So important thing about all of us is we have to be with the silence within. That is our natural state. Talking, doing anything else is not a natural state. It needs energy to be able to do anything external. To be with yourself, you don't need any energy. You're conserving energy. So important thing Bhagavan keeps saying, for us to be able to be in that silence, we have to do self-inquiry. Self-inquiry is wherever the thought comes, ask for whom is this thought? For me. Who am I? When you keep asking who am I, what happens? You keep plunging within and keep going into that silence. It is the silence between two thoughts. You keep plunging into that and keep plunging in, and then what happens? The period of the thoughts will start reducing, and the silence will go on increasing. The period of the silence will go on increasing, and point will come that you will be in perfect peace within. So whatever may happen in the world of names and forms is perfectly acceptable to you, because you know it is just a passing show. There is absolutely no reality to this passing show. You are the consciousness that is giving all of this reality. So once you understand that very clearly, then we are actually in peace. So let Bhagavan, for the next 20 minutes, let us do self-inquiry and plunge inside the deep silence within, and experience the bliss within. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Can you, Revathi, can you keep the timer for 20 minutes, please?
Sure, uncle, I'll do it.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. I request Dr. Sharda to
Namo Ramana. Thank you, Venkatesh. Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, who shines as a self in the heart of all beings. By the infinite grace of the self manifest as Ramana, we have been able to meditate on the words of Bhagavan and his answers. And Venkatesh took us to the story of narrated by Bhagavan Ramana, which we have also presented in one of our dance dramas. That is, it was called Atma Ramana Dhvani, the voice of Ramana, who is the self. So Bhagavan has told us that it's all in the mind. And here we are doing manana in this part of the satsang on the verses from Ramana Gita. That's again question answers, questions by devotees to Bhagavan and answers from him around 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, in those years when Bhagavan was staying at Virupaksha cave and later also in Skandashram. A few question and answers have happened in Skandashram. So we meditated on the first chapter of Ramana Gita. And before we go on to the second chapter, which is centered on Bhagavan's Eka Shloki, Hridaya Kuhara Madhye, we will once again do a little more of manana on the second chapter, on the first chapter, where Bhagavan is answering 6 questions of the Muni. The 6 questions, and what was the sequence? We did go through them once last time as well. The first question and answer pertained to the Satya Viveka. Actually, the first chapter, we can say, lays the foundation for all the chapters. Because in a way, the Muni is asking whether meditating on Bhagavan, on any scripture, or doing any kind of manana is good enough, or whether certain other aspects have to be touched upon. And Bhagavan is saying that we have to do practice, upasana. Upasana is most important. This is what Bhagavan is saying. And that is the title of the chapter as well. The first chapter of Ramana Gita, the title is Upasana Pradhanya Nirupanam. Bhagavan says Muni has chosen that, the Upasana Pradhanya, as the title of the first chapter from the various answers which Bhagavan has given. And he has said it's very important to practice. And practicing what? Practicing of self-abidance. That's what Bhagavan has defined upasana as. He has defined upasana as practice of self-abidance. And he has said that everything else, it could be Satya Viveka, is an aid for us in the practice. So we begin actually, how does our spiritual practice begin? It begins with Satya Viveka. We recognize that some things are transient, which is anitya. And we also realize that which is not permanent, that which is not nitya, is also not satya. By definition, we are taught that only that which is ever present as it is can be the truth. Because that which appears and goes away is seen by us clearly to be untrue, or a passing reality, or a mirage. When we look at a mirage, we say it is a mirage because when we come close to it, we do not see the water. Similarly, when we wake up from the dream, we say that was only a dream. And what makes us say it was a dream? Not because while the dream is going on, we feel it's unreal. No, it's only because we wake up from the dream and we find that that was a temporary experience and it is different from the what we take to be our permanent identity, which is the waking identity. That's what we take to be the reality. Similarly, if we were to wake up from this waking, so-called waking state into another state, which is the state of self-abidance, then we would recognize that this is also just a dream. So that is the experience. However, the moment we start meditating on that which is real and that which is not real, gradually our mind is turned towards the question, who am I? Because if that which I have taken to be myself is not real, what is the big deal of focusing on it, of spending so much of time and energy on this entity which is unreal? To think so, Bhagavan says, gives us vairagya. It gives us dispassion. And dispassion is important because without vairagya, we cannot turn within, we cannot turn to the self, or we cannot hold on to the self. Even if we turn within, we cannot hold on to it unless we have strong vairagya. Viveka and vairagya are two aspects of practice which support the vichara, atma vichara. So, Satya Satya Viveka. Satya Satya Viveka is discrimination. Viveka is intellectual discrimination. It makes us understand this is true, this is not true. This is good, this is not good. We may know something is not good. However, we may indulge in something which is not good for us. This often happens because when we sit down for our vichara, it is not our intention to spend our time in thinking about anything else at all. It is our intention to become free from thoughts completely and to abide in the self, which is the upasana. However, what happens? We end up indulging in thoughts, or we end up indulging in dullness. We may fall asleep. So, what happens? Though we have the viveka, though we have the understanding that this period of time I have set aside to do self inquiry, I don't actually do it because I don't have sufficient vairagya. So Viveka and Vairagya are different. Vairagya is putting into practice, applying the Viveka which we have used, the analysis which we have made, the truth and the untruth. This is not true. Therefore, I don't want to hold on to it. When we strongly feel that, that gives us Vairagya. So Bhagavan says, Satya Satya Vivekam tu Vairagyam. It gives Vairagyam. Okay, it doesn't give us the Atmanubhava. What gives us Atmanubhava? What gives us total freedom? It is only Atmanishtha. Mochayet Sakalan Bandhan Atmanishtaiva Kevalam Satya Satya Vivekam tu Prahur Vairagya Sadhanam. It gives Vairagya. So we know that we can make use of Satya Satya Viveka in order to develop Vairagya. And actually speaking, even that disappears because what is Satya Satya Viveka? It is a mental activity. It is an intellectual activity. It is with the intellect that we can say this is true, this is not true, this is permanent, this is not permanent, this is real, this is unreal. Who can say this? Asks Bhagavan. Bhagavan says, Sada Tishtati गंभीरो ज्ञानी केवलम आत्मनि न असत्यम चिंतयेत विश्वम नवा स्वस्य तदन्यताम. So Bhagavan is pointing out to us that this discrimination between Satya and Asatya, this understanding, even the understanding, say, when I get a thought in self inquiry, initially I say that the thought is not Satya. Why? Because it is dependent. There are two factors. One is the reality is permanent, it is Nitya, and it is independent. See, it is not dependent on another reality. The light of the moon is asatya, it is untrue because, first of all, it waxes and wanes. That apart, it is not its own source. The light of the moon is not its own light at all. It is the light of the sun alone. But if you look at the light of the light of the sun is Satya because it is its own light. It never changes, it never goes away, and it's of the very nature of light. So, Bhagavan says that, so when we look at our thoughts also, right, we say the thoughts are not real because they are dependent on the I thought. So, Bhagavan says, ask yourself, for whom are these thoughts? This is the Satya Satya Viveka we do in self-inquiry. We recognize thoughts are asatya because they are dependent on the I thought. And further, what do we realize? We realize that the I thought is also not Satya because the I thought is dependent on the self, like the moonlight is dependent on sunlight. It is not its own light at all. So, the truth, the sun of jnana, once one is abiding in that, there will be no further thought whether something is darkness or light. Does the sun think that something is darkness? Does the sun feel, oh, out there is darkness? The sun cannot feel it because the sun knows only light. Similarly, Bhagavan says that the jnani is ever abiding in the all enveloping self. There is nothing apart from it. Therefore, there is nothing that is false. But in the course of sadhana, in order to get vairagya, what do? We recognize that thoughts, we can use the viveka, thoughts are mere thoughts. They're only thoughts. They're not the truth. They're not I. We should not get carried away by our thoughts. But what do? We actually get carried away by our thoughts. We feel they are I myself. And that is why various aspects of the thoughts come up, our desires come up. Where is the question of having any desire if we are not attached to our thoughts? Thought, every desire is only a thought. So the need for the fulfillment of the desire, which Muni puts at the end of the chapter, which is actually stopping us from experiencing the fullness of the self, that desire will be known to be really only passing. It is not the truth. And using that, one must get back to self-abidance. Therefore, knowing that the thoughts are not real, knowing desires are not real, knowing that it does not matter, that it may get fulfilled afterwards. When it gets fulfilled also, when it gets fulfilled, it will not matter to us. So it's absolutely anitya. All this we may recognize, but unless we practice, unless we experience, unless we actually abide in the self to the point, Bhagavan says, where there is nirvasana mauna, where there is no further rise of any thought, where there are no further questions happening. Unless one gets back to that state of steady self-abidance, one will not be free. That is what Bhagavan is re-emphasizing for us and restating again and again in this chapter. And then he says that the beauty of such a state is that it will be Sarva Bhuta Samatva. It will be equality to all beings. So there will be no difference at all. And we saw while doing manana on this, we saw that we can practice it slowly. We can practice it physically. We can try to practice compassion towards all beings. But internally, Bhagavan says we can practice it by recognizing that all our experiences are only thoughts. So, as and when we experience anything whatsoever, whenever we have an experience, we have to understand that this is only a thought. This experience is only a thought. It is nothing else. No matter what it is, the experience, if we look at any of our experiences, whether they are about gross objects, or whether they are about subtle objects, whether they are about sense related experiences, whether they are sense related experiences or whether they are abstract experiences, they have to be only thoughts, nothing else. Every experience, when there is a subject and there is an object, the recognition of the object is called thought. The recognition of the subject is called thought. And in every recognition of the object, recognition of the subject is also implied, says Bhagavan. We may not be obviously thinking about I, myself. We may be thinking about somebody else. But it is only my thought of somebody. If I am not there, I cannot think of somebody else. Only because I am here, I see, I hear, I have all my experiences because of my awareness of myself. That this is proven to us every day in our deep sleep when we are absent and there's nothing happening at all. So it's when I rise as Sharada, as an entity, when each one of us rises as an entity, then the subject and the object apparently rise together, says Bhagavan, but actually it is on the rising of the subject, then one becomes aware of the object thereafter. So, whenever one has an experience, one can realize that this is a thought. This is a thought. This experience is a thought, and this thought has two parts to it. This is the Satya Viveka that we do based on the reading and understanding of the Ramana Shastra. Bhagavan says that alone again is not enough. We have understood the Shastra. All of us have understood the Shastra, the Ramana Shastra. What is the Shastra? The Shastra is that our true nature is immortal, it is Satchitananda. This body is not the truth of ourself. We are not the mind, we are not any of these things. The body itself is only a thought, and it rises along with the rise of the mind. And the mind is a set of thoughts. Don't all of us know all this? Have not all of us heard this many times over? Have we not meditated upon it again and again? And why do we need to meditate upon it again and again? Because our vairagya, our conviction is not yet strong enough to make us turn away from the thought as it rises. It is not strong enough. Therefore, we repeat the reading or the listening to the Shastra. Then we continue with the Satya Viveka in the practice of inquiry by trying to address every thought by saying, this is only my thought. It has no power of its own. It is my thought. And then who am I? Who am I? So, by asking us this question repeatedly, by repeatedly telling us that this is what we have to do, we are building up the Vairagya. And at some moments, the Vairagya is so strong that we are able to have a dip into the self by getting into absolute silence. When the Vairagya is very, very strong, at that moment, there will be no thoughts. There will be the question, who am I, has come to us with great intensity. There will be no thought at that point of time. Then one is silent. But what happens? One comes out and says, I experienced bliss, I experienced silence. And so one comes out of the silence and converts the experience into one more thought. One makes it one more experience by recalling it, by making it a piece of memory. We make it into one more thought. Then what do we have to do? We have to apply Satya Satya Viveka to get back to Upasana, to get back to abidance. That's what Bhagavan is saying. Abidance, abidance. Abidance alone, Upasana alone can release us. We must abide, we must practice, and we must consciously abide in the self. And the more we abide in the self, gradually, Bhagavan says, it becomes sahaja. Abhyasakale sahajam sthitim prahur upasanam. So that same sahaja sthiti is called upasana, and upasana is most important. We must practice. Any amount of study is good, but the study is meant to lead to vairagya, and the vairagya is meant to lead to upasana, practice of abidance. To the extent possible, we must keep trying to get back to the source. Get back to the source. We must keep trying to do that, because that alone, Bhagavan has told us in the first chapter, that that alone will be able to liberate us. Satyas Mochayet Sakalan Bandhan. All the bonds will be released only by the abidance, and then the steady abidance. By Bhagavan's grace, let us all be able to practice, to do the upasana of the method of self-inquiry. By the method of self-inquiry, let that practice be blessed by him with the upasana, with the experience of self-abidance, to begin with maybe intermittently, and to hold on to it, because that is the only worthwhile thing. And Bhagavan has assured us at the end of the chapter that everything that we could have ever asked for will be granted to us, will be added on in case we wanted anything at all. Everything will be granted when we abide as the self. So there is no need whatsoever to postpone abiding in the self, or the effort to abide in the self. May His grace fulfill this practice and bring it to its fruition. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. We conclude the evening satsang. Aparat Sachit Sukhava Virashe Yasyomi Matam Bhuvanam Samastam Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Gabhiram Chinta Vihinam Hrida Chintayami. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana